Hello. How's everybody doing? Oh dear. Hello. How's everybody doing? There you go. So this has been kind of a fun day. I've really enjoyed myself, and I'm sure you guys have too. So either you are here because you really want to hear me talk, or you're excited about the raffle. And you're just like, where's the free goods? So, Paul Saunders, I'm the head of product strategy for Cloud ERP at SAP. I'm also what they call the chief evangelist, which means I talk about ERP a lot. I fly around the world. I spend most of my time sitting, waiting for airplanes. Sometimes they even take off on time. And then, talking to audiences like yourselves. So when I was first invited to do this, I was really excited, and they said, can you talk about something about innovation, and maybe not AI. Which is great. And sorry, I hate this thing. So let me get going with the presentation here. And I'm just going to ask. I know there was at the start, Patrick said, asked, and we had probably about 2/3 of the audience was developers, and the other third were kind of management or business people. How many people here, when you were at school, and maybe you had career counseling or something? How many people wanted to have a career in technology? Put your hand up if you did. That's pretty good. I mean, I would say that's probably about 80% of you wanted a career. I did not. This is not how my career was supposed to have gone. I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal from about the age of about 16. When I was 11, I started programming computers, and I was actually quite good at it. And I was very fortunate because I went to this school in the UK that was the very first school in the UK to get computers for students. This was 1981. It was a long time ago. And does anybody know what that is? Has anybody programmed one of those? So this is a Sinclair ZX81. This was the first computer that I ever programmed. It's a spectacular machine. For the technology people in here, it had an 8-bit processor running at 3.25 megahertz. It's a Sinclair's version of BASIC. It had 1K of memory, 1K. And then you could also buy a cassette storage that you could kind of connect to it, and that ran at 250 bits per second. That's not an M missing out of that. That is 250 bits per second. But the main thing was, and some of you may know the value of this, it had floating point support. It was the first computer, or certainly the first personal computer, to have floating point support. So I learned to program on this. This was the book that they taught us on. And you can see here, it was just called The Computer Book. And you can see it was a very modern looking thing. And this computer here, if you lived in the US, you probably learned to program on the Apple, or the Apple II. In the UK, we had what was called the BBC Micro. So it was actually BBC, the government-run TV station. They drove this on behalf of the government. And this computer here was the BBC Micro. Now, the thing that was nice about the BBC Micro was that it was networkable. So we would sit in these labs at school, and these computers were all networked together. And at about the age of 13, I worked out that what you could do is you could send really rude words to somebody else's terminal when the teacher was walking by. And that's really how my career in technology got started. I was so excited that I could get other people into trouble, and they would do the same to me. So then you learn to be really, really fast. Let me see if I can get this to, over to you because the teacher's coming around, and kind of that's how it went. But this was me when I was probably 20. So I went to this really good school. It was an all-boys school. It was kind of the traditional, what you expect from a UK education, blazers, and looked a bit like Hogwarts and all this sort of stuff. But I started playing guitar when I was 11. At the same time, I was playing, learning how to program. And over the time, as I became older and older, I decided that I loved the guitar bit more and more and more. So by the time I went, when I was about 16, I had a career counseling lesson, and the career counselor came to me and said, "Saunders, what do you want to do with your life?" because, everybody wants to decide what they're doing for the rest of their lives when they're 16 years old. And I said, well, I want to be a rock star, sir. He said, don't be stupid, Saunders. What do you want to do with your life? And I said, I want to be a rock star, sir. And he said, I think you need to bring your parents in. So my parents came in, and my dad was, a kind of an old school, not really kind of the lovey, friendly kind of, it's just like, shut up, sit down, sort of person. And the teacher said, Paul's, needs to be really serious about his future, and, he keeps saying that he wants to be a rock star. And my dad, to my absolute amazement, said to the teacher, if he wants to be a rock star, he can be a rock star. And the teacher then said, well, I think he probably should go somewhere else for the rest of his school. So I did. And I went to an art college. And so I studied performance arts. So my bachelor's degree is in dance, drama, and music. And I'm not going to dance for you because I failed. I failed absolutely miserably. I am pretty thick-skinned, and I love doing this sort of thing. And I'm really not that self-conscious, apart from dancing. And I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I don't go to weddings in case somebody says, oh, we should dance. It's absolutely miserable. But the thing that I love about music, how many people here can play an instrument of some sort? What you find a lot is that people who like technology are also quite good at music because they're both structured. The thing that's nice about music is, certainly in Western music, you've only got 12 notes. So the same 12 notes that we use to write Beethoven's Fifth are the same 12 notes that we use to write Sex Pistols, Nevermind the Bollocks. That's it. It can kind of change as they go along. That's all you can do. I just want to point something out here, because I promised that I would. I made the mistake last week of asking our legal team at SAP if I could use certain images. So all the horrible stock images in this presentation are thanks to our legal team, because they wouldn't let me use anything remotely fun. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the history of enterprise apps, and I'm going to cover this in about 2 minutes, and I'm going to tie it into music as well, because music's more interesting than ERP. So if you go back to when SAP started in the 1970s, we were one of the first companies to come up really with kind of joined up end-to-end business processes. The term ERP itself didn't actually appear until about 1990. My former company, Gartner, came up with that term in 1990. But what people often think of ERP is it's a big system that does everything for everybody. It's a big monolithic system. And it's a bit like a vinyl record. If you have a vinyl record, you can kind of play one side of it, you can flip it over, you can play the other side, and that's it. What you can't do is go, I really like that, but I don't like track 2 on side 2. I want to change that with something else. And that's what monolithic systems were like. They did what they did, and that was it. And when I was a CIO, I deployed these monolithic systems to people. And what we did is we said to people, like, this company's going through mergers and acquisitions. Everybody does things their own way. So we're going to force you all to use this system, and IT's going to tell you what to do. And you know what? People didn't do it. What happened then is we got this best of breed. So companies like Salesforce and Workday and these guys who kind of made their own little best of breed solutions, they started going around and they were talking to the business and saying, how would you like to have an HR solution that's built natively for the cloud and you don't have to tell the IT team? And everybody went, yeah, that's great. I would love not to tell the IT team. What they didn't say is, well, actually, if you want any data into it, or if you want to authenticate against it, or if you want to integrate it with something to actually make it a usable business process, yeah, you're going to have to tell the IT guys. But the sales pitch was, it's like that. So think of it it's a bit like a cassette tape. And looking out at you, there's probably very few of you that actually use cassette tapes. There's a couple of you who did. I'm not going to point you out, but there's a couple who did. But what we did with cassette tapes is we got all these different albums and we made these cassettes of our favorite songs. It was the most romantic, and still I think is the most romantic thing you can do for anybody, is to make them a mixtape. And it really is just a spectacular thing that you can do. But once you've made that, you still couldn't go back in and then go, oh, I don't like the third song. I don't like that band anymore. I want to change it for something else. it's kind of fixed. And the problem with these best-of-breed architectures, where you pick this from this vendor and this from this vendor, and we stitch them all together, and it's normally us as developers and IT people that have to do that, is that it's really relevant for this moment in time. And tomorrow it's not. And the day after it's certainly not. So then in 2014, Gartner came up with this term called postmodern. Postmodern ERP was really the start of when ERP cloud started. And think about it with things like the iPod. When the iPod first came out, it had a really nice, simple design idea, which was 1,000 songs in your pocket. But what we did with the iPod is we took all of our CDs and we ripped them and we stored them in the cloud. And that was it. And then we went, oh, we're now digital. We didn't change what we listened to, we didn't change the order we listened to, we didn't do anything. The way that technology is today is more like Spotify. So as your business changes, the technology is grabbing different pieces from across your enterprise and actually beyond your enterprise and tying these things together. For SAP, we have a technology called our Business Technology Platform. That's the piece that kind of does that automation and integration piece that pulls all of these things together. So our strategy at SAP is to lead with AI first, and then with suite first. And when we say suite first, we mean because people work together in a business, or at least they should. And suite first is more of a mindset than it is just a collection of technology. We know from history that just making people use the same software does not make them work together. So, I'm going to tell you a little story. When I had that kind of funny looking hair and everything, I played in a rock band in New York City. And I did that for about 5 years. And like every other rock band, we were so close to being famous. So close, But what happened is I moved to Los Angeles and I worked in the music industry in Los Angeles. And I did what was called post-production audio. So I worked with all of these big artists, but I never met any of them. I did lots of rap records. I would cut out curse words from rap songs. And it was great. It was the best job because you would start off in the morning. And these were the days when we still used fax. Email wasn't really that big. And I would get a fax with the lyrics of a rap song. And then I would have a call with the A&R person from the record company and sometimes a legal representative about which rude words we had to cut out. Still the funniest meetings that I've ever had. And then we would cut those things out. But one day my wife and I were living in the valley in Los Angeles, and we didn't really have much money. We'd just been married. And we had one of those showers over the bathtub, and the shower had broken. And the landlord hadn't fixed it. So if you wanted to have a bath, wanted to be clean, you had to have a bath. So it's about 11 o'clock at night on a Friday. I work these weird hours. And I'm sitting in the bath, and the phone rings. And my wife answers the phone, and then she pops her head around the door of the bathroom and goes, it's Lenny Kravitz on the phone for you. And I was like, no, it's not. She said, he says he's Lenny Kravitz. And I was like, okay. So I picked up the phone, I was like, yeah. And he goes, is that Paul? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, did you do the edits on Flyaway? And I said, yes, I did. He goes, I'm making a video, I want to make a change. And I was like, oh, when do you want to do that? And he goes, now. So I got out of the bath, I drove down to Hollywood, where my studio was, and then I spent the next few days working with Lenny Kravitz on creating the video edits for Flyaway. And he was nice enough to actually give me this double platinum disc. Not any money, but he gave me a nice double platinum disc, which is in a cupboard somewhere because my wife doesn't think it matches the rest of the decor at home. But kind of that's where it is. But there's a couple of things that I learned from Lenny Kravitz from that particular session that really kind of pushed me back into technology, and I think they're really important. So I'm going to kind of go through very quickly 10 quick lessons on innovation that I've learned from classic rock albums or classic albums in general. So the first one is the Lenny Kravitz one, because what Lenny Kravitz said while we were sitting there in this studio that I worked in was a really expensive studio in Hollywood. And even back then, I was getting billed out at $240 an hour, which was a lot of money. I mean, now we're talking thousands an hour for that. That was good, wasn't it? And I was talking to Lenny about this stuff, and I said, tell me about your album. Where did you record it? And he said, oh, we recorded the whole thing at my home studio on my computer. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, he said, there's this software called Pro Tools, and we recorded the whole thing on Pro Tools. And of course, because he's Lenny Kravitz, you know, and he's not just ridiculously good looking and in shape and works out wearing leather pants and sunglasses. But he said, oh, and I played every instrument on it. So he played every instrument on it, recorded it himself, and I'm sitting there going, I don't think I have a career going forward. If you can do all that yourself, that's probably going to be a change. And since then, you know, you can get your iPad and you can get, you know, GarageBand on your iPad, and you can do more with GarageBand on your iPad than you could do in that multi-million-dollar studio that I used to work at in the 1990s. So really, the first thing with innovation is technology will force us to innovate, whether we like it or not. You know, you've seen lots of presentations over today talking about how change is constant, and this is one of the things that we live with. Technology is now really driving that change. The second one I want to tell you about is the album Nevermind. So in can't remember what year it was, 1990, I was working at a record company in New York City, and my boss came in to me and she said, I need you to come and listen to something. And I came into her office and she got this cassette tape and she put it in and she said, tell me what you think. And she played like the first 30 seconds. I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever heard. And it was the demo tapes for Nirvana's Nevermind album. And I was like, this is amazing. And up until this point, the big thing in music, particularly in America, was hair metal. So bands like Poison and Cinderella and things like that, you know, really kind of big hair, lots of makeup, very tight trousers, you know, and really, some of them were good, but many of them were just not. What Nirvana did is they tapped into this frustrated audience of people who were sick of this kind of boring hair metal stuff. And they made very, very quickly, just with this, you know, that first riff, they transformed this whole industry. And you see this a lot with innovation as well, particularly technology innovation, where there's things like, if you think about the iPad, you know, I remember when my colleague at work first said he was going to buy an iPad, and I was like, who needs an iPad? What do you need an iPad for? And then you find out that there are actually millions of people need iPads. And now I don't travel anywhere without mine, you know, and I'm sure many other people don't as well. So these things will absolutely change once you find an audience for your innovation. Again, I apologize for the stock graphics. I had all the album covers in and everything, but no. So there's a term called anti-fragility. Anti-fragility is where not only do you make sure that your business is resilient, but as things happen, you become better and stronger because of it. One of the ways to think about it is a bit like when you do exercise, you actually damage your muscles, and then when you eat and you sleep, it repairs those muscles and they come back bigger and stronger. Or not. So in 1980, or 1979, around that time, AC/DC were really just starting to make it big. And then their singer, Bon Scott, died choking on his own vomit in a very rock and roll kind of way in the back of a car in London. And everybody thought, this is it, that's the end, they're done for. Then they went and hired this guy, Brian Johnson. If you want to see something really funny, and you can find it on YouTube, there's an interview with the American DJ Howard Stern talking to Brian Johnson about when he interviewed for AC/DC and when he did his first audition. And Brian Johnson at the time was working in a vacuum cleaner repair shop and singing in a band. And he was told that he had to come down and audition for this band, and he didn't know who it was. And he gets there, and it's AC/DC, and he sings with them. And they tell him at the end of it, you've got the gig. And he goes, okay. He goes, I've got to go. And they're like, what do you mean you've got to go? He goes, I've got to get the train. I've got to open the shop in the morning. And they're like, you've got the gig as the singer of AC/DC. And apparently he did go back up and open the Hoover repair shop the next day. But it's a great story. But this idea of like, just because something terrible happens doesn't mean that that's the end of your innovation. Things will and can change very, very frequently. One of my favorite stories in rock and roll, there's a great album by the rock band Deep Purple. It's a live album called Made in Japan. And in the 1970s, rock bands were known for their excesses. This was the days when you threw TVs out of the window and you did, copious amounts of drugs and alcohol and all these kind of things. They were proper rock bands in those days. And they got into, the members of Deep Purple really didn't like each other. And by this point, they were really kind of sick of each other. And you can actually hear this on the live album. And they're having an argument on stage about the sound. Now, if you've ever played in a band, you will know that you can't hear anything because the drummer's always really loud. You know that the lead guitarist has got an incredible ego and just wants to hear himself. The bass player really doesn't know what day it is. And then the lead singer, which I was, thinks the world revolves around them. So they get into this big fight, and so the story goes, is that Glenn Hughes says, look, I can't hear myself, make the bass louder in the mix. And John Lord, the keyboard player, goes, I can't hear the keyboards, make the keyboards louder in the mix. Richie Blackmore, the guitarist, goes, turn the guitar up, make the guitar louder in the mix. And then Ian Gillan, the singer, says, the greatest line in rock history, look, just make everything louder than everything else. And I'm sure all of us work at places where that's how we seem to do prioritization. What's the most important thing that you do? Everything. I mean, it makes me laugh at SAP that our strategy is AI first and suite first. You can't have two things first. One of them has to be first. But it's AI first and suite first. We also did a thing within our team where we went through and said, okay, what are the 10 most important things that we want to focus on in 2025? And we've come up with 12. So that, 12 of our top 10 are the most important things that we're going to work on. But again, when it comes to innovation, this ability to prioritize, and sometimes you're going to have to drop something that you might actually fall in love with, but just to say, look, we're not going to use this anymore. Who knows the band BTR? Yeah? So I didn't know the band BTR until recently. So I wanted to have something that was like a Bulgarian reference for rock music. And the thing that I love about BTR, one is they're about the same age as me. But two, right after they released this album, they got Glenn Hughes, that bass player I was telling you about from Deep Purple, and they came together and they did a big concert here in Sofia, I think at one of the national auditoriums. And they did a cover version of one of the Deep Purple songs called Mistreated, which is one of the greatest songs ever written, and well worth listening to. But I just love how, they took, they very big, certainly at the time in their home market, and then partnered with, the former bass player from Deep Purple, collaborated and brought these things together. If you think about it from technology perspective, mobile phones, for example, it wasn't one company that created those. You've got, the Japanese companies coming in, you've got the American companies coming in, you've got some of the European companies coming in, everybody partnering together to come up with something that's net new. You cannot innovate really by yourself. Even when you see things like, Elon Musk did this, or, Nikola Tesla did that, or whatever it might be. No, they didn't. Everything is collaborative. They're the ones who got the recognition for it, but it's a collaborative thing. Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell. One of the greatest rock albums of all time. This is a great one about having faith. So Meatloaf was actually an actor and a theater singer before anything else, and he did a great film called The Rocky Horror Picture Show and played one of the characters in that. He then joined up with this guy, Jim Steinman, and a guitarist and producer, Todd Rundgren, and they started writing this album. And they started in 1975, and it wasn't done until 1979. And they took it to every single record company, and every record company said no. And there's a very famous person in the music industry called Clive Davis. Clive Davis used to be the head of Arista Records. He's the guy who discovered Whitney Houston, Barry Manilow, Patti Smith, all of these. I mean, really, really good. And he said to them, which is quite famous, he told Meatloaf, he goes, look, you're an actor, don't try and sing. And then he said to Todd Rundgren, do you have any idea what a rock record sounds like? I suggest when you leave here, you go buy a rock album and listen to it. That album has sold 43 million copies. It's in, I think, the top 5 best-selling albums of all time. So when we innovate, not everybody's going to go up front, that was the greatest thing. Wow, I'm so excited that you did this. You will get told over and over again, that's a stupid idea, you're an idiot. And which, I get told quite frequently, actually. But these things, if you can stick with them, they add a lot of value. Any jazz fans in here? So I'm not a huge jazz fan, but I really appreciate jazz. When I worked in the studio in Los Angeles, I would do all of this editing, and it was all on a big computer-based system, and most of it was rock or rap. And rock or rap is really easy to edit, because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, cut. That's it, it's 4/4, most of the time. Jazz is not. And, I would sit with some of the jazz artists, and they'd be like, okay, you want to go there? I'm like, where? They're like, cut there. I'm like, I don't hear it. I don't hear it at all. And so a lot of the times they would actually have to do the edits for me. I would show them where it was on the desk and say, okay, hit that button when you need to cut it. Jazz is incredibly talented. Miles Davis, Kind of Blue is probably the greatest jazz album, or certainly in my view, and I think quite a few other people's views. What Miles Davis did in 1959 is he took what jazz was at the time, which was becoming really kind of a little bit overcomplicated, and he made the bass tracks really simple chord progressions, which then enabled the musicians to improvise a lot more. And so when you enable, think about it from a development perspective. If you're given a nice, solid framework to work with, and then you're allowed to use your creativity, that's when you write some of the best code that you can write. That's when you come up with the best things that you can. And Miles Davis, I think, did this incredible job with this, going back even, all those years ago to 1959. Beasty Boys. So the thing that I saw the Beasty Boys live in 1992 in California, in Irvine, California. And it was really right before they broke up, and they were absolutely incredible. The thing that was great about the Beastie Boys is they really didn't care what you think. And sometimes we have to have that kind of, when we're trying to do things a little bit differently, you can't get, upset by what people think. And they did not. And they were 3, kind of punk kids from New York who, started this whole type of music. And Paul's Boutique is an absolute classic. But what they did on Paul's Boutique is they went and took musical samples and themes from so many different cultures. And they brought these things together. One of the things when it comes to technology innovation is to make sure that you don't say, well, this is how we do things here. It's a big problem that we get, particularly with large organizations, to say, this is how we do things, this is the culture of our organization, we're not going to change. What you want to be able to do is to say, we are happy to think of diverse inputs into how we do this. You want diversity of background, diversity of gender, diversity of race, and all these kind of things, but it's diversity of thought. There's this idea in Buddhism, which is you want to have these, I think it's called, it's a beginner's mind with experienced hands. You want to make sure that somebody's going, yeah, but why do we do it that way? Maybe there's another way to do it. And sometimes when you go to innovate, when you get somebody who has no idea what you're talking about and you have them kind of contribute to it, you can do things incredibly differently. I was very fortunate. I used to be the CTO of a university in Scotland, and I worked with we had a morgue, and we did forensic science and forensic investigations at this morgue. And I took my entire team to the morgue, because I said, you need to learn about the customers that we, And I said to my wife when I was going in, okay, so I'd never seen a dead body before. And I said, okay, so when I go in, do I just scream and run out the door initially, or do I just go in and then pass out? Which one of the two things am I going to do? The thing that I found was it's absolutely fascinating, and so they took us into this room that was probably as big as this, and there's all these tables laid out for all of the surgeons who are learning how to do these different surgeries. And they pull back the cover, and there is this cadaver with its chest like completely wide open. And it was I thought it would, I'd be dropping, but it was absolutely fascinating. And the thing that I loved about it is the lady who was in charge of this area is, her name is Professor Dame Sue Black. She's a member of the House of Lords, and I'm very happy to call her a friend. And she actually got me the opportunity to meet the former Queen and Prince Philip, which I'm going to tell you just a quick story because it was funny. So they're opening this center for forensic science. I'm there. And we're standing in a line, and we've had all of our stuff taken off of us, no phones, no nothing, and everything else. And the Queen's going around, and she's got her entourage, and then Prince Philip's coming around. And if you don't know the story about Prince Philip, he had a tendency to say the worst things you could possibly say. He was kind of the antithesis of politically correct. But he was, the Queen's husband, so he could really get away with it. And so the Queen comes along, and somebody said, Your Majesty, this is Paul. He's responsible for all the technology here at the university. And the Queen, who was about this high, goes, oh, that sounds very important. And I said, it is, ma'am, thank you. And off she goes. And I was like, oh, that's very good. Spoke to the Queen about technology. Then Prince Philip comes along a little bit later, and they go, Your Highness, I think he was Your Highness, she's Your Majesty. Your Highness, this is Paul. He's in charge of all the technology. And I had these dark rimmed glasses on. And he goes, you've got very square glasses on. Thank you, sir. And he goes, And then he goes to my colleague next to me and he goes, what do you do? And the gentleman goes, oh, I'm in charge of corporate fundraising. He goes, oh, what's that? And he goes, well, I convince companies to donate to the university. And he goes, oh, you're a con man. And then off he goes. But the thing that I love about it is when I was working with this organization, doing all this forensic stuff, I know nothing about science at all. I really don't. I don't think I passed biology. But they brought in people from across society. I was one of them. We had high court judges, we had police, and we had all this sort of stuff to talk about how we could fix forensic science and the criminal system. And it was the most incredible few weeks I've ever spent. And what we actually came up with at the end of it was a comic book on blood analysis. And I have a copy of it. I don't think it's a big seller, but it was really fascinating. But bringing that diversity in is so critically important. Radiohead. I absolutely love Radiohead. Radiohead released OK Computer, massive, massive hit. They were really kind of the biggest they could be. And when they were coming out with Kid A, it was the biggest expected album in Western music at the time. And when it came out, everybody hated it because it didn't sound like any of the other Radiohead albums. They completely experimented with what they did. It was kind of a bit like the Beatles did with Sgt. Pepper when they went and grabbed all this stuff and did backwards tapes and all of these kind of things. But now, Kid A is recognized as one of the greatest albums ever made. So again, sometimes with experimentation, you have to be prepared and be quite comfortable with, being told that your baby is ugly. It really is something that you have to think about. And I think when you've got things like Radiohead, who now, you look back and you're like, wow, there's some absolutely amazing songs on that album. But at the time, nobody liked it. Absolutely nobody liked it. And then one of my favorite musicians of all time is Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa was, I think, probably the greatest and most undervalued guitar player of all time. An incredibly, incredibly good guitar player. He was also a little crazy, to say the least. I don't know if you know, it used to be Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention. There's a famous story about them, and it ties back into Deep Purple again. They were doing a show in Montreux, and they had the finest recording studio and recording equipment, and they were recording this live thing. And somebody in the audience thought it would be a good idea to take a flare gun and shoot a flare gun at them. And it set fire to the whole place. Everybody escaped, and the whole thing burnt down, and they lost all of their equipment and all of their recording stuff and everything else. As a result of that, Deep Purple wrote the song Smoke on the Water. And if you listen to the lyrics of Smoke on the Water, it's all about Frank Zappa and the mother of invention doing a show when they had the best equipment, and then it all catches fire and it all burns down. But Zappa was known for using technology in music way before anybody else was. And the thing that he said, which I really love, and I think it applies a little bit to AI, even though he certainly wasn't talking about AI. He says, computers can give you the exact calculation, but they have no emotion. They don't have any eyebrows. And I love this, and I think it's so important because with technology, we have to be the eyebrows. You know, AI can do some amazing things, technology can do some amazing things, but it's not human, and it's not going to be human. You know, so I think it's our job to say, okay, we've got to be the ones who can provide that. And so when we're trying to innovate, we have to think about what will this do for the betterment of us as a society and a world. So Stuart Butterfield from Slack said, how do you measure innovation? And he said, the best and maybe really the only way to measure innovation is a change in human behavior. I can't remember who said it, but somebody once said that innovation happens when somebody does something with your idea. Just having the idea is not enough. But not just having the technology is not enough either. We have to actually do things differently. And that brings me on to just kind of a wrap up, and then I'm going to tell you one last little stupid story. So technology will change things. It's an absolute given. You know, just in my lifetime, and by the way, for all the programmers here who are worried that AI will take your jobs, when I started programming, we were told that case tools would take our jobs. And there would be no need, and you could use, you know, a bit later, it's like you could make UML models, and you know, you wouldn't have to code anymore. Just do a UML model, put that together, and write the code. No need for developers anymore. There'll be developers for a long, long time. You know, I think you're absolutely fine. But technology is a forcing function. You've got to find your audience. There is a hidden audience out there of really, really passionate people. And I think if you find those passionate people, it's so much easier to drive things forward than if you try and sell them on something and get them excited. Malcolm X once said, you know, the problem with the revolution is that we try to motivate a sleeping people. First, you have to wake people up, then you get action. You know, you've got to be anti-fragile. Don't just try and be resilient and say, okay, I'm not going to let anything happen to me, but say, look, things are going to happen. Let's see how we can change with that. Prioritize. I know it's really, really hard, but you've got to be able to prioritize. One thing has got to be more important than the others. Collaborate. You know, within this group here today, I'm sure there's many companies that are working together. You know, I've been having some great conversations with the colleagues over at Microsoft. We do a lot of collaboration with Microsoft. We also compete with Microsoft. Our products are much better than Microsoft's, by the way. But, you know, it's really important to be able to collaborate with them. Have faith. This is a really hard one at times. You know, the Germans, who normally have the best words for everything, they have a word called Weltschmerz, which is world weariness. You know, sometimes when you turn on the news, you have that feeling of world weariness. You know, sometimes when you work as a developer and somebody has that wonderful question, it's like, okay, so how long is it going to take you to fix the bug? I don't know. It's a bug. You know, if I knew what it was, it wouldn't be a bug. I would have fixed it. You know, it's the most annoying question of all time. But you've got to have faith in these things. Simplify. You know, as developers, we can make things really, really complicated. I mean, just look online at some of the wonderful ways people can write Hello World applications. It really is quite spectacular how complex we can make things. Diversify. I think diversity is the key to it. And I say it's not just about race, gender, color, creed, and all this sort of stuff, but it's about background and thought and these kind of things. Experiment. Have fun with a lot of this stuff. And if you've got to find a company you can work at that gives you that freedom to experiment. And then, most importantly, be the eyebrows. Your job is to be that person that says this is what it's important for humanity. When I was at school, when I was 16, right before I was asked to go to a different school, I used to get the bus every morning. It was a public bus. And in the UK, most of the buses are double-decker. And in those days, you could smoke upstairs at the back of the bus. So the naughty kids would sit at the back of the bus and smoke. So we would be up at the back of the bus in the morning, smoking, and normally talking about stupid things. And I looked in my goodie bag today, and I saw the sticker from Experian that says, "I'm a developer, what's your superpower?" And we were having a conversation this morning, when we were 16, about if we had a superpower, what would that superpower be? And because we were 16-year-old boys, we all decided it would be invisibility. And it was largely so we could get out of doing cross-country runs. You could just hide and then wait for the good kids to come running back and then reappear again and just go, oh, that was hard. But also so we could go into the staff room and see what they really thought about us, because we thought that the teachers absolutely hated us. They probably did. But one of my friends, Rich, he would get on the bus a few stops after us. And he was always late. So he would, 9 times out of 10, he would be running for the bus, and he would have his traditional British school bag, and stuff would be dropping out of it. And we would open the bus windows, and we would throw stuff at him, just to help him along, and normally call things at him and say stupid things, and so on. So this time we're having the conversation about superheroes. He finally gets on the bus, and he comes upstairs, and he's all disheveled. And somebody says, without giving him any context to the conversation, "Hey, Rich, if you had a superpower, what would it be?" And he goes, "Oh, flying." And we're like, "Oh, we haven't thought of that. That's kind of cool." And he goes, "Why?" And he goes, "I could fly to the bus stop in the morning." And all of our stupid 16-year-old brains just went, "Couldn't you fly all the way to school?" And he went, "Oh, yeah, I suppose so." And this is what people are doing today, I think, with AI. We're trying to work out how we can use this incredible superpower of AI to fly to the bus stop, to get on the same bus, to go on the same journey to the same destination. Instead of saying, if we have this power, what could we actually do with it that would actually be better than that? So with that, I would say, that's actually a pretty good picture of me, isn't it? I don't look that good. I use this one everywhere. I've got proper headshots, but I took that one myself. Yeah. So, but with that, thank you very much. I'm really glad that you enjoyed this event today. Thank you for listening to me. Bye-bye.